I'm Vance Bastian, here with my co-host S.A. Baz Collins for this week's Written on the Edge Season 9, Episode 10 interview. We'll be talking with Rob Osler. That's right, he's back to share his second book, Cirque du Slay.
Very welcome. Thank you for reviewing.
My pleasure.
Or reading, or whatever. Enjoy.
Exactly. So, because this is a continuation of a series, let's give folks a real quick, what prompted you to write it? Where did the passion come from? And then we'll tell them about Hayden Friends.
Yeah, so I've always enjoyed the traditional mystery, and I love a good amateur sleuth, kind of your good old-fashioned gumshoe, kind of dole out the clues as like a breadcrumb trail, and you as a reader can ride along with that amateur sleuth and try to, solve it as they solve it and see if you can solve it before they solve it. And then, you try to play fair as an author, but it's also fun then as a reader because, there's a bit of a game and you're trying to puzzle together the clues. And at the end, the big reveal, and I love the big reveal where, if it's all done right, you go, it was all there. I should have seen it. So I've always loved reading those kind of mysteries. And so then and I've always kind of like dabbled with the notion of like, I'm going to write a book someday. So then when I finally did write, Devil's Chew Toy, book
Yep.
one,
Yep.
Hayden and Friends series, um, that's what I wanted to do because that's what I enjoy writing. That's kind of like my lane as a reader and now a writer. And then the other thing I'll add is it was super important to me that the not just characters, but the main characters be, gay, lesbian, trans, what have you. It's all good. And that they not be mean to each other, they not be the victims, they not be the villains. And just as important as that representation is by having them show up on the page is relatability. And so it was super important to me that the characters, it's hard to avoid stereotypes because there's a truth to those characters. They become stereotypes for a reason. But
Hmm.
I didn't want them to be, just cliches of like, oh, there's the gay, there's the lesbian, that their humanity is really what kind of punches through on the page rather
Yep.
than, and as I'll stop here by saying, I really think it's true. I've said this before. I hope it's true that I could have swapped all of the characters that identifies LGBTQ plus out as straight, and that the story still works perfectly, right?
Hmm.
The plot lines, the twist don't demand those characters be queer. I just argue they have a whole hell of a lot more fun being queer in the book, and it's something I'm comfortable with. So there you go.
Nice.
That was my inspiration and execution.
And for folks who haven't heard your first interview, we should, one, direct them to it, but two, point out that you claimed a hashtag that could possibly be a new genre in your quozy.
A quozy, yeah, it was, I have an approach, I still, to this moment, as I sit here chatting with you, have an approach avoidance issue with cozy.
Right.
And the issue is I'm not anti-cozy per se, but there are these, rules of a genre,
Hmm.
right? And some are bright lines and some are gray lines and fuzzy and dotted and, curvy. And my intention was never to write a cozy per se. My intention was, as I described earlier, to, write with certain sensibilities and certain rules for myself that the gays weren't going to be the victims and the villains and so on.
Hmm.
But along the way, it became, dubbed as, oh, that's a cozy with a C, because you've avoided, sex on the page. You kind of
Right.
fade to black if they even get if they even get to a close to a bed anyway, and you don't have, you're not dropping F-bombs, and you don't have, like fight scenes with, with blood spurting out on the page.
Right.
So it's a cozy. And I'm like, yeah, but if people think it's a cozy, I think about like going into Fabulosa bookstore, which is in the Castro, a neighborhood we used to live in San Francisco. And it was a young guy behind the counter. And I'm like, I was going in to shop the book, and I'm like, and it's a cozy. And he had no idea what I was talking about. And I was like, all right, so this could help because it kind of defines, it kind of sets four corners for the book,
Hmm.
but it might be too confining and, send people in the wrong direction that, this is about a knitting shop and a grandma and a cat circling her ankles. And it's just like, again, not dissing that, but that's not what this is.
Hmm.
So, long story short, and my background is brand strategy for corporations. So I kind of blended those two worlds and said, well, sometimes for positioning, you create a category, to give that audience,
Hmm.
an extra angle, a different view into what you're doing to help maybe kind of pry it open, the frame open a bit. And so for me, it was like, all right, it's queer, it's a cozy, it's a quozy, just like a bromance, right? Or
Love
a
it.
rom-com. So there's the story there.
Oh, don't worry, the
Perfect.
children will take off with it. And I think to give people some context of why we're discussing this, there's a great show that actually fits this mold, and that is Only Murders in the Building,
Yep.
because it has a very queer sensibility. It is in the realm of cozy because sex on the same, they do drop some F bombs here and there, but it's still it's in that vein of what you're talking about. It definitely has a queer sensibility. We know Selena Gomez's character. Then you also had Braz's stunt double, who was played by Jane Lynch. So you had all these things that are woven into it, and the queerdom is just part of the fabric. It makes it a richer story, but
Hmm.
it's not the be all end all of it. And I think that show, if people want to get kind of wrap their head around what we're talking about and what your books are, that show could give them a good example. It's kind of like that. It's that kind of cozy in that form. You know what I mean?
Right.
I totally know what you mean, and that's a really good call. I love that show. I enjoy it. Uh, and it's hard too. It's like, it's just your good old fashioned who done it.
Right.
Hmm.
It's good. I think that's a good descriptor. I would like, yeah, it's kind of Murders in the Building meets Scooby-Doo
Right.
with
Right.
with queer
Yep.
characters.
Right.
Yep.
Yep.
So let's talk about what Hayden, Hollister, Burley, and the others are up to in Cirque du Slay. I mean, it's a three rings of fun.
It it I hope it is. The inspiration for this. I lived in Seattle where the books are set
Hmm.
for 17, 18 years. You mentioned my postgraduate schooling and that kind of stuff, which was in Seattle. Um, and they had a long running show. It was Cirque du Slay-esque, but it included a fancy dinner. And
Oh.
so you'd sit there and you get served dinner, and then you drink wine as the acts went on the stage, and it was kind of burlesque. It was a little more sexy. The sex quotient was a little dialed up from like Cirque du Soleil, which is totally family fun, and I
Hmm.
love Cirque du Soleil. And so I was like, all right, that'd be a really interesting venue because authors, writers get asked this type of question all the time, which is, do you start with plot or do you start, kind of where do you start? And for me, it's characters. I like to really dial them up. And so I'm like, all right, so I got Hayden and I got Hollister. I gotta have a murder or, some sort of crime that they can solve. And I need them surrounded by really crazy characters. So, it was kind of like a gimme. It's like circus, you know, but and I think it might have been Kirkus. One of the reviewers called it an adult circus, and I was like, oh wait, that
Mm.
I wouldn't pair it that way. Adult circus, it's a circus for adults, which is a very different thing.
Sure.
But yeah, so it was inspired by this long running show called Teatro Zinzani, which played for a long time in Seattle. It may have toured a little bit, or
Yeah,
maybe a
there's
lot.
one in San Francisco.
Oh yeah, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So it's inspired by that, and it just got crazy characters because I can have acrobats and
Hmm.
magicians.
Hmm.
It starts with Hollister, who's like the stature of Serena Williams. Um, and then her mohawk adds 6 inches, disappearing, in the magician's crate, cart in the stage. So, I could have fun and play with it that way. Uh, but yeah, the high-end circus comes to town, and the new artistic director, famed magician, is the victim without giving it away too much. And then Hollister and Hayden are on the case. And as I like to say, and they continually lower the bar for being an amateur sleuth as the chapters roll on.
They lower the bar. Nice. All right. I don't want to spoil it. I might know too much. So, Baz, I'm going to ask if you have any questions.
No, really, it's just I kind of like the fact that, again, doing what we queers do, we push the envelope in a direction that people don't expect, and that's just typically what we're known for. We make culture that way.
Yeah.
And I just think that it's something that people should open themselves up to, because it's taking something that's familiar and, for lack of a better term, putting a slant on it,
Yeah.
and it's giving it a new life in as a different type of form of that genre. So, kudos to you for doing it and keeping it up, because I think it could be a thing. And once the kids hear quozy, I'm telling you, that's going to be a thing. So we're just going to have to make sure we put it up here as a hash so people can start picking it up and running with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And the kids love a good hash. So
yeah. Another thing that I'm intentional on doing is, all the stuff I've already talked about, but also, keeping it real. I was invited to write a guest article in Crime Reads, which which I still have to do. Deadline's looming, but the topic I picked is kind of like is called Cozy Renegades. Pushing the boundaries of cozy. And it's really interesting, especially in Cirque du Slay, because I ratcheted it up just a scooch, right? Some of those real world considerations. I mean, Hayden at one point, references, morons, threatening his community by going to drag queen story hours at the public library, which, one character who's kind of villainish does or has done in the past. Hayden is in drag for the first time in Cirque du Slay, which I had fun with, and but it folds into the plot. One of the smartest characters I've introduced in the book is Jess, who looks a lot like Hayden, almost his doppelganger, and is the lawyer who steps in to represent the frenemy Sarah Lee, and Jess happens to be trans. And again, for all of my characters, it's like I don't go deep on the trans experience. First off, it's not my experience, and I have to do a lot of research and a lot of sensitivity reads, which I'm not adverse to doing. It just, I just didn't feel for me, and I don't judge any author for, stepping out of their lane for their own life experience. It's like if you do it and you do it right, it's all the proof's in the pudding. But still, it's like I'm pissed off by like the treatment of trans people. These are also, these are our people. And so it was super important to me that they be in the book,
right,
and that they just show up and they're just there.
Yeah.
Right. It's more what you really understand about that trans character is they got a houseboat. They're a lawyer. They like kayaking. They're skittish about getting another cat because their other one got lost. It's things about life.
right.
Right. And it's like, you
Which
listen
is
to
all they're asking for is
That's all
representation.
any of us are asking for.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so it's like, and so, it also plays into the cozy again, back to my approach avoidance with cozy per se, because it's like, I'll just tell you, I got into a fight with the editor, right? About like, save that trans character. I was like, God damn, I'm not saving the trans for what? It's like, I'm not saving the trans character. Trans character's going in the book. Well, I don't know about that drag scene. No, drag scene staying in that book, because for me, it's hard to write and be authentic as much as this is a crazy story. Let's be serious. It's wacky. But, still, it's really hard to write about a 25-year-old gay protagonist and divorce him from the world of a contemporary 25-year-old gay man in a big city. Or, I suppose the city really doesn't matter. He's a 25-year-old gay guy. He has sexual thoughts. he's not screwing around every other night, but I'm not judging that if he did. One thing that was in the book that was a tussle, and I finally had to give up on it, and it still makes me mad, is at one point, he's getting ready to go to Hunters. He's 25 and he's single, right? So he's getting ready to go to Hunters, the nightclub, and he's like, I put on my, my cutest shirt, shows off my eyes, breath. I got all my shots and I'm on prep. I'm going out and prep. Oh my God. It's like, oh, and I was like, this prep is not about sex.
No.
It's related to sex, right? But what prep is an FDA approved drug to keep gay men or LGBTQ people, whoever takes it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to wrongly put it in a box, but it's there to help keep people, healthy and alive. That's
Mm-hmm.
what that is. That's
Yeah.
all that is. That's just good, smart, responsible thinking for yourself and your community and your sexual partners. That's all
Mm-hmm.
that is. It was one line, didn't go deep, right? So, but it was the cozy constraints were used kind of as a cudgel to go like, no, it's a cozy. And I'm like, no, it's a quozy. And that Q means something. That
Right.
Q
Right.
means that these are contemporary queer characters, and you cannot strip them of their authenticity and their identity just because it's a cozy. I never signed up for that. What I signed up for was, to have these sensibilities that you're calling a cozy. And I'm like, that's cool. But don't deny him his authentic self because he's not a grandma in a knitting shop. He's
Right.
Right.
not.
Right.
So that was a little bit of a tangent, but you can see
And,
I get
and to
worked
be
up
quite
about that
blunt,
because that's what I'm up to.
the grandmother would insist that her queer grandson take the prep.
Right?
So, where are you going with that?
Well,
Right.
so for listeners, I know that may have sounded like a rant. I would like to point out, after having read the book, that Rob has written it so well, and that was such just a part of the character that was not, it was part of who he was, but it wasn't part of the story. I had forgotten until he mentioned it. That's how well this book is written, though. This book is about the character's actions, not the boxes they fit into.
Right. And I think as queer people, we would only see that authenticity and it would just blow right past us because that is our world.
That is normal. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's like, saying I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and it was remarkable, well, what the hell was in the peanut butter and jelly? Because it's such a normal thing. We all know
Right.
that experience. So it just washes over us, and that's that kind of thing. And so, bravo that, that we're having this discussion because I
Yeah.
think we need to get it out to the readership and we need to get out to people who might be editors and stuff and say, hey,
This is how it's
authenticity
done.
needs to reign the day. It needs to hold true.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you've compromised the entire work.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I would also like to say, I didn't know about the fight you had to put to keep things in the book. It's published through Crooked Lane, which is a subset of Penguin, right? Penguin Random House.
Penguin Random House is the distributor.
Oh, okay.
So they didn't play any editorial role.
Okay. But
Yeah.
still, you were, standing up to the big boys for your story. And I want to give you kudos for that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and in the end, I got most of what I wanted in there. And I appreciate yeah, I know it was a bit of a rant. I got all worked up like a fiery political speech. And you're right. I hope that just as you described it, it's in there, but
Mhm.
it's not a political book. It's not a fiery treatise
No.
on,
And
gay
context
rights.
is everything.
It's just there, it's just atmosphere. It's not the main event.
No, that's just it. And like I said, as a queer reader, it just felt like normal life. That's why it didn't even ding to me as something that needed to be said,
Yeah, right.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want folks to know about the book?
Hopefully, I would just say it's a fun romp. If you like Cirque du Slay, um, I think you'll like it. If you like a little bit of romance, I think you'll like it. I mean, one thing we didn't touch on is, as in Devil's Chew Toy, let me back up. Hayden is a middle school public school teacher, much abused by his students. They call him Mr. McSmall, even though his name's, Mr. McCall, because he's like 5'4". I should have said
Hmm.
this. Hayden
Yep.
is 5'4", and he's got this crazy riot of red hair. He weighs 100, 30 rounding up. Whereas, Hollister, his who becomes his best friend, they meet in book one. Another author said, she would be played by Leslie Jones in the
I
movie.
was just
Yes, yes. And I don't know who he'd be played by. Somebody small with crazy red hair.
Hmm.
a really
Um,
young Leslie Jordan.
yes, that's brilliant.
Because if
Yes,
you look at Leslie Jordan back in the day, he would fit that
right.
mold, you know. So
That's exactly right. So anyway, so Hayden, so those are the two main characters. But Hayden, on the side of being a public school teacher, he writes a relationship blog, which I had fun with in both books, because he doesn't have a boyfriend, but he's dispensing relationship advice, but it comes across as life advice, and it's just kind of where he is able to show his heart in these posts called Mates on Dates.
mm,
And those are in both books, those are interspersed. And so it's kind of like a gear change, where you can kind of step out of the action, and he's writing his posts, which really are mostly about his unrequited love with a go-go boy who goes missing in the first book.
mm.
And so where Hayden is maybe like, a 6 or a 7 on a good day. I know we're not supposed to rate people, but it's explained in the book, and it's not offensive, I hope.
And people
Camillo,
do that. So I'm sorry, whether you think it's right or not, that if that's how the character sees their world, you have to be true to that.
that's true. That's true. But Camillo's a 10, so he's just like he's really enamored with him, and he's a super nice guy. But anyway, you asked if there was something else, and I think I'm really pleased with how those posts from Mates on Dates
Hmm.
are interspersed, because it's a little different, in terms of structure than a lot of other uh murder mysteries and whodunits, to kind of have that element.
Hmm.
But again, it's a different window into Hayden's world and his psyche.
It's a great emotional reset, though. So when, as you know, as a writer, you have to kind of use the emotional cycle because you can't have people sit at one emotion for too long. And that is a great way to reset that cycle.
Mm.
I mean, that's what I thought and
Yeah.
also, what's the HBO series? The family with the, uh, not the murder home, the funeral home,
Oh, 6 feet
Oh,
under.
6 feet
6 Feet
under.
Under. Do you remember how they used to use the commercials for funeral directors for the
Hmm.
same reason? They would use those to help you giggle a little bit, but reset your emotions for what was going to happen next. And I got that vibe off of his posts.
That's really good. Yeah. Yeah, you're totally right about that.
All right. Are you ready for this year's Get to Know You questions?
Oh, yes.
Take it away,
Okay.
Baz.
All right, we'll speed right through these rapid fire questions. So, in the year of going deeper, what's your favorite writing snack or drink?
Pie.
Okay.
What kind?
Oh, my favorite is like strawberry rhubarb.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
nice.
Oh yeah. Oh,
That's just the
so
best pie.
totally there with you. Okay, what books did you grow up reading?
Agatha Christie, and this was just asked of me for this other purpose. It's like McCleary's The Mouse and the Motorcycle and Runaway Ralph. They're both on my nightstand. The
Wow.
best. Where he's an actual mouse, and he's got like his helmet's like half of a ping pong ball, and he has this. They're the
Okay,
best.
excellent. Sounds good. Okay,
Yeah,
who has been your biggest supporter of your writing?
probably my husband.
It's kind
There
of a
you
given. They put up with us.
go. Seriously. Oh,
Okay, are you a morning person or a night owl?
neither.
Oh,
I
she,
like to sleep
she's
in,
a
and
midday peacock.
I like to go to bed early.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, what's your favorite hobby outside of writing?
Tennis.
Oh, okay. Has writing and publishing books changed the way you see yourself?
No.
Okay.
Maybe
If
that's not interesting, but that's truthful, I guess.
okay,
No.
no, that's what we want. If you were to write a spin-off about a side character, which one would you pick?
Oh, so this isn't about the series, but um, I've got a short story out there with this cross-dressing, crazy amateur sleuth, and I really want to write a standalone about him. His character name is Periwinkle, and I'm very enamored with him. I want to write a standalone about Periwinkle.
All right, perfect. We'll keep an eye out for that. Have you ever traveled as research for your book?
No. Well, actually, for a historical series that's coming out next year, completely different thing. Yes, to New York, and specifically the tenement, excuse me, the Tenement Museum, which I highly recommend.
Excellent. Okay. And finally, how do you celebrate when you finish a
Oh, just a sigh of relief, honestly.
book? You just blow away like the wind.
Yeah,
Just billow like that grocery bag in American Beauty.
yeah, yeah, I just turned in edits on something that comes out January of next year. Yeah, the copy edits, and it was just like, oh,
Well,
sin. Oh, thank God.
yeah, there you go. Well, you made it through the list. Bravo.
You did. And you preempted a question I was going to ask next. But let's talk about Misdirection, Periwinkle's short story.
Yep.
It was nominated for this year's Edgar Award, right?
Yes.
Congratulations.
I know. Thanks. I mean, if you look at the other authors, I mean, it's really nutty. I'm not pretending to be humble or it's like, look at the other authors. And what's also interesting is I didn't know this. It's like short story can be a long short story. They can be up to like, I think it's like 22,000 words.
Hmm.
And I think the other four nominees really are close to that limit. They're very long short stories, and Misdirection is about 5,000 words, and it's a classic whodunit.
In
And the
5,000
editor,
words.
yeah, and the editor at Ellery Queen, who's been a real champion, she was the one who sent me the email, said, you're up for an Edgar Award, because it's her magazine.
Uh-huh.
But she said, I'm especially gratified because it's been a while since like a good old fashioned whodunit, because there's a lot of crime,
Hmm.
but it's not necessarily, sometimes, it's like there's no whodunit, who did it. And again, I'm not dissing those, but yeah, and it's also hopefully really humorous. And Periwinkle is a cross-dresser in a retirement community, even though he's in his 50s, because he inherited it from his mom and he couldn't sell it. So as he said, I saw the Harvest Gold, wallpaper on the wall, and writing on the wall, and I just moved in. And yeah, so a retired burlesque dancer is murdered in the rec room, and Perry's on it.
Nice. And folks can read this on your website.
Yes, robosler.com. If you just
Slash
get to
short
there,
stories for this, but yeah.
/ short stories, it's in the main, top line menu. Just go to short stories where you think it'd be, and it's right there. And thanks to Janet and the team at Ellery Queen for giving me permission to post that. And hey, plug for Ellery Queen. There's also a link right there on the page, so you can subscribe to Ellery Queen.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Is there a social media where you're active and folks can interact with you?
I do it all. I mean, X, and it's like, I wish, I'll delete it. Yes. So Facebook, X, Instagram, Blue Sky, I'm on all of those.
Perfect. And those links are at your site?
Sorry?
And those links are on your site?
They are. But
Right.
Also, if you just look at Rob Osler or robosler.com, I think I'm pretty easy to find.
Perfect. All right. Any final words of wisdom?
Read broadly, right? If you're straight, read something else. If you're a person of color, read a trans book. If you're a trans person, read a book by a indigenous person. I mean, just read more broadly. It's, if anything, if fiction is anything, right? It's just escaping our world and exploring another. So explore. I encourage everybody to explore more broadly.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful.
That part.
All right, folks, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to Rob Osler for coming back, sharing his second book with us, and more importantly, sharing that wisdom with us. Thank you, Rob, so much.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
And it was our pleasure too. All right, we at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. So if you enjoy learning about new artists or hearing our thoughts on entertainment media, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. The show was produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.roguepodcast.com. Tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Bye-bye.
Oh, what's that? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.